Welcome to the meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Victoria Bamashile, and I am the chair of this committee. This evening's meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Council's YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Please ensure that when you speak, you turn on your microphone, as otherwise it will not be heard on the recording. Okay? Also, please be aware that we are not expecting a fire alarm this evening. And in the event that the alarm sounds, please exit the building by the nearest marked exit and assemble outside as indicated by the scrutiny officer. We will now move to the business of the meeting. Apologies and introductions. George, have you received any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Afori Atta, who's been substituted by Councillor Ferrand this evening.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to see we've been joined by a number of members. I'll just pause for a moment. That's fine. I'm pleased to see we've been joined by a number of members of the Youth Council as well this evening. Welcome. And I look forward to hearing what they have to say. I'll now ask everybody present to introduce themselves. If we have been joined by members online, if you could introduce, but we haven't, so that's absolutely fine. I'm going to start from my right.
Thank you very much. Simon Sims, Head of Children's Sufficiency and Access to Education, Employment and Training.
Gail Fothergill, Strategic Lead for Community Learning and Employment Support.
Maria Bowness, Group Director for Curriculum and Pedagogy at Milton Keynes College.
Hi, there's Sam Core, member of the Youth Council.
John T. Pence, member of the Youth Council.
Remy, member of the Youth Council.
I'm Councillor Jane Carr, and I am a member of this committee. Thank you.
Hi, Nam Kotari. I'm a parent representative for special schools.
Councillor Tracy Bailey, member of this committee.
Good evening, Councillor Selina Raja, representing Shenley Brook End Ward and a member of this committee.
Good evening, Councillor Aisha Khanam, member of this committee.
Hi, I'm Georgina Thompson. I'm the primary school parent governor representative.
Evening, I'm Mandy Legg, Councillor Mandy Legg, representing Loudoun and Shenley Ward and a member of this committee. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Jenny Ferrand and I'm a substitute member of this committee.
Hello, I'm Councillor David Hopkins. I'm one of the vice chairs of this committee.
Hi, I'm Mim Kendrick. I'm the local area partnership manager for special educational needs and disabilities, working for the City Council and the Integrated Care Board.
Hi, good evening. I'm Maria Denny. I'm the Assistant Director of Education and Learning.
And evening, Matt Heath, Director of Children's Services for Milton Keynes City Council.
Good evening, George Vincent, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much, everyone. That moves us on to item 3, disclosure of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest today? Yes, please go ahead.
Chair, just for transparency reasons, just want to declare interest in item 6. I currently have a daughter that's in post-16 education in MK and another daughter that's looking for post-16 choices currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Perfect. That means... Oh, sorry, please, Councillor Bailey.
I just declare I've got a son in sixth form, but I don't think it's a major interest.
Okay, Mandy.
I have a daughter in PhD at the OU, so that counts.
Okay, and I work for the Open University as well, so we've all made our declarations. Thank you so much, everyone. That moves on to item 4 now, which is the minutes. So we've got the minutes of the meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny held on the 11th of November 2025 on pages 5 to 11 of the agenda pack. Are the minutes agreed? If so, I'll sign them later. Thank you. And item 5 is the action tracker. Do officers wish to comment on any of the actions listed within the report? Do any members of the committee have any contributions they wish to make? Perfect. In that case, just before the tracker is received, I will note that on page 16 of the action tracker, there is just a year change that needs to be changed. I'll just bring that up quickly.
Okay, shall I take that? So it's
Perfect,
on
thank
page
you.
16 on Families First Reforms. The date due to be completed is pending at the moment. It says November 2025. If on recent text, it should be November 2026. So it's just a correction from 25-26, but no other action has changed on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mac. In that case, I'll propose that we receive and note the updated recommendations, action tracker, and information relating to outcomes agreed at previous meetings. Are we agreed? Thank you. We now move on to item 6, which is post 16 and post 18 education. So our first item for the evening is on post 16 and post 18 education, skills and further pathways. This topic was selected in conjunction with the Youth Council members, and we've been joined by members of the Youth Council who will participate as members of the committee. Simon, would you please introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair. So, as set out, I understand that the report was requested to consider the position for young people aged 16 and over in relation to the pathways for them for education and into the workplace, and in particular reference to the skills and the experience that young people would have that supports them into that workplace, and looking at what pathways are available, particularly within Milton Keynes, and the links between those pathways. So in the report, I've then set out essentially the different roles and responsibilities and what the sort of legal position is in relation to pathways, support, etc. for young people aged 16 and over, particularly setting out then the universal offer with regards to careers, advice and guidance that's required to be delivered by schools and colleges, and what that entails, including the work experience offer as well. Set out within the paper the different pathways from post 16 and post 18 as to the routes that are available, especially because there's been significant changes in those in recent years. And to be honest, it is a very confusing picture out there. It's very different to what it used to be, and that obviously takes a significant amount of support to guide people through. Set out then what that looks like specifically within Milton Keynes in relation to post 16, the different types of providers that young people will be able to access the different routes through, whether that be education, whether that be training, or then through with local employment, and captured as well in the table the picture in relation to the statistics for Milton Keynes about the percentages of young people that are not in education, employment or training, or not even known, which is obviously a significant concern as to where they've moved on to. The picture for Milton Keynes is significantly better than across much of the rest of the country, the national position and our statistical neighbours as well. That doesn't, however, underestimate the challenge that's out there for young people. We've set out then the local authorities' particular duty in relation to tracking and identifying the young people who are unknown or who don't have education, employment and training, and therefore classed as NEET, and the support that we're able to then give them to support them to re-engage and see what it is that that they need essentially to support them on that journey. So I've talked there about the the team that we've got, how we go about doing that, the amount of resource that we've got, and how we work through, particularly focused with specific groups of young people, but actually ahead of that, the amount of work that the team do and the wider team that we've got around supporting young people in the sort of pre-need space. So that would be pre-16, working through with schools, particularly to make sure that actually children don't fall out of the education system, that we know who they are, and that very much then tracks and challenges as to why it is that we're being so successful in the post-16 space, because we know these young people, they're on school roles and we're working with them. We've also then set out the position in relation to post-18. Again, the national picture as to what's universally available through National Careers Services, Job Centre Plus, but then talking through about the education and training pathways that are available, and then specifically the work that we do as a local authority that links into either supported employment for those specifically with special educational needs, learning disabilities, and now the newly launched Connect to Work, which is a newly launched national initiative that we've started here in Milton Keynes, responsible for delivering that, although we're accountable to a local area. It's being done across locations, and we're part of that. So that's very recently up and running, and that paper then talks through the eligibility criteria around those people that would be eligible for that scheme. So essentially it sets out what our position looks like. As I say, it is a challenging picture out there. Overall, Milton Keynes is currently delivering more positively than other people in this space, which I'm proud of. However, that does not take away the challenge that exists.
Thank you. Did you want to also introduce Maria?
Yes, thank you. So whilst I've very much focused on the work that we do as a local authority, I invited Maria along with us as well. And Maria's then at the college. And Maria, do you want to briefly mention, would that be appropriate? Maria's role and involvement?
So my role at the college is Group Director for Curriculum and Pedagogy. So I work with our heads of school to make sure that we've got the right curriculum available. The right curriculum available for our young people, and for them to be able to follow the career paths that they want to follow and meet their aspirations. So we work with employers to make sure that our courses deliver the skills that young people need to be employable, or to go, and the skills they need to go on to university, or whatever their aspiration is.
Thank you very much for that, Simon and Maria. What I'll now do is I'll take contributions and questions from members of the committee. So please indicate if you'd like to speak. Okay, David, and then Mandy, and then Trey. David, Mandy, Jenny, and then Tracy.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Mine's very much a question either to Simon and to Maria. What work do we do in Milton Keynes in terms of liaison with employers, big businesses, smaller businesses, to actually find out if we're actually delivering the skills coming out of college, coming out of school, that actually make people employable? It's a fast-changing world in this era of AI and everything else. But are we actually delivering the skills that are required by the businesses, or businesses that are looking at Milton Keynes and the surrounding areas to invest? And we had a debate only a week or so ago at full council about universities. Are employers put off by the fact we don't have a university within Milton Keynes, or really does it not make a heap of difference in terms of their decision whether to invest in this area or not?
So what we do as a college to work with employers is we have our own employer engagement team, but we have several schools within the college. So, for example, our School of Business, our School of Creative, and each school has an employer forum. And we have a group of employers that meet with each curriculum head and their teams and their staff. And the curriculum plan is done alongside employers and with employers. We plan our curriculum to working with the employers. So we're listening to the employers and asking them, what do you need from our young people? What are the skills you are looking for? And how can we, and sometimes those skills aren't part of the written awarding body curriculum, they are much further and wider, and then we discuss how we can make sure our students leave with those skills that the employers are looking for, and that we map our curriculum to ensure that we provide those skills and that the employers are part of that provision. They're coming in, they're speaking to our students, they're part of sessions, our students are going out to employers. So that's a piece of work that we do constantly every year. We had a big employer forum about general skills a couple of years ago, and we were looking specifically at our level 1 provision within the college, and our level 1 provision was in a school, so you could come and do, students could choose to do level 1 in anything, but employers, so they could do level 1 bricklaying, level 1 hairdressing, level 1 art and design. Employers told us, actually, we would rather you concentrate at that level on maths and English and employability skills. We would rather you spend that time not teaching them necessarily the industry skills, because if they've got the skills we need them to have at level 1, they can do that at level 2 and level 3, and we can support you develop those industry skills. So we completely changed our level 1 provision. We removed it from all of our schools within the college, and we now have what we call Futures Academy, and we work with our employers to just work on those skills. And what that has done is improved English and maths grades for that level of learner, and it's supported improvement in progression onto level 2, and then they've been able to follow their pathway. It's also supported them to have careers advice, because we have a carousel which of industry skills. So each term they can try something differently. They can go and do brick, they can go and do art. So that supports that advice and guidance and that choice of where they go on to level 2. So we continually work with employers with shaping our curriculum.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I can very briefly then cover just in terms of the universal bit across within schools. It's unfortunate that the schools have less flexibility in terms of what they're delivering, because they're required very much to stick with the national curriculum, and it's very clear as to the nationally set exams through the exam bodies as to what they're being assessed on at the end of it. So sadly, a lot of what they're doing is quite restrictive, as in it's very much focused upon those exams, getting the results and supporting that route. I think then what Maria's clearly there is then work with employers, etc. But in terms of the readiness, it's going to be very much focused around that's what's required from a national government perspective. Maria's set out in relation to the college and how they've got more flexibility to do that. But I'd also like to pass over to Gail, who is the strategic lead within my team around our community learning provision and our employment support services. So our adult education provision that we run that goes from post 16 onwards, and Gail can give a bit more information about the particular groups we support and how.
Yeah, so if I start with the 16 to 19 provision, oh, sorry. So we basically have a very small cohort of 16 to 19-year-olds who actually study with us as part of community learning, and so we offer work experience for all of them. They all participate in that, and also we talk to lots of different employers across the city. And then for our 19+ provision, we work with all sorts of different employers. Like recently, we've worked with Take Me Taxi, for example, NHS. We run what's called swap courses directly with DWP and employers, so that they can have direct. So basically, a swap course is for adults to be able to gain direct experience, as well as do an employability course with that particular employer, and then they're all guaranteed an interview at the end, and then some of them, are successful. We work with nurseries, we work with loads of early years settings, we work with care homes across the city as well, so we have a lot of direct input with those. And also we have our supported employment programme as well, so that's for adults who at the moment have got SEND, and so within there we have a team who go out and work and find them placements, and eventually that hopefully that leads to employment. So again, all sorts of different employers such as Premier Inn, the Co-op, loads of different places. So that's done now very much after vocational profiling of the people, so that it's tailored to what they want to do, so as opposed to just doing a blanket employer engagement. But yeah, we do have links with lots of different places.
Thank you. David, did you have a follow-up, or are you happy with that?
I may come back with a separate question later. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. Mandy?
Thank you, Chair. So we have an excellent range of providers providing a wide range of opportunities for young people, which is really good, and good engagement with employers across the city in terms of what's needed. And I like that during level 1, we're looking at the readiness for work. And so there's part of a question on that. Does that include emotional readiness for work in terms of emotional regulation, or using trauma-informed practice within education within that level 1 qualification? And also the main part of my question is how young people themselves are shaping the post-16, post-18 provision, and what might they feel is missing from current pathways, and how do we capture the voices of young people who might not engage well with formal consultation. So yeah, that's a question to Maria and Gail and Simon. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to start on that one. So yes, the whole level 1 provision is looking at that young person as an individual and as a whole, and all of our provision it's with regards to inclusion and making sure we're meeting the needs of each individual and providing them with the skills they need to follow their aspirations. So most definitely they're supported. Their needs are supported, but they're also supported to develop strategies so that they can move forward and have the confidence and resilience that they need to move on and to go further educationally and into employment or wherever their paths are leading them. With regards to our students playing a part in the curriculum, we have learner voice opportunities, and we definitely listen to our students. That's why we're there. It's absolutely vital to hear their voices and to hear how they feel about the education we provide, and whether the opportunities are there for them, and what else we can do to improve what we do. So there's a plethora of learner voice opportunities for students within groups. We have student reps, student council, and it's a big part of what we do, listening to our students.
Thank you. I think from our perspective, our ambition and our intention is to ensure that the vast majority of young people are supported in the mainstream, and that the mainstream is able to meet and support their needs and support them onto the pathways that they require. From our point of view, as I set out in the paper, our role is very specifically focused around those who are most vulnerable and most at risk of falling out of the system, or who essentially then have fallen out of the system. So essentially we do quite a lot of work in the pre-NEET space to then support and engage the young people, to try and really focus on capturing their voice and support what it is that they're looking for, and support their ambitions as to what they can achieve and the direction that they could go, help that visionary stuff, and try and support them on that, really unpicking what their interests are. We've been fortunate enough to literally just have our inspection in relation to the advice and guidance that we give out in relation to community learning. It's called Matrix. It's done through the Department for Education, and we've had the verbal feedback, and draft report's just been given to us, but I can probably share from that point of view some of the feedback that we got, particularly in relation to the work that we do in the pre-16 space around supporting vulnerable groups, where we essentially, our team is then the colleagues are embedded within particular teams that we have. So for instance, in our youth offending team, we've embedded a worker within that team to support those specific cohorts. We've got that as well in the care experience group as well, to support those cohorts to work and build those trusting relationships with those young people, so that we can really capture that voice and they have confidence in those trusted professionals. That's come through really strongly in our report, particularly, as I say, with regards to those groups, people, for instance, youth offending groups who may not have had such positive experiences and relationships with other professionals in the past, just because of the backgrounds, etc. But actually they've been able to build that relationship and be able to support them on a journey, and give the advice and guidance that they'll actually feel invested in, because they feel it's come from a trusted professional. So we've done that in the pre-16 space. Gail could probably talk a little bit more then specifically about the post-16, because those who then haven't been able to secure at post-16, we do have the provision which Gail referred to previously, that we've then started up within community learning that we're growing, but that's then very focused upon the very specific needs of those young people and what journey they need. So Gail, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So for our post-16 provision, we work primarily with those young people that are not in any education, employment and training. So they come along and we have a health and wellbeing group, which is very, as you said, trauma informed. Our tutors are trauma-informed tutors, and they work with young people to build up their confidence so that they can regain some sort of training or education in future, or hopefully the near future. And then we also have a level 1 and 2 pathway as well. But also a lot of them we aim to then be able to send to the college in the following September as well. And we have a team who work with those who don't have a positive destination at the moment to try and find them an outcome that is meeting their needs. It's not always possible, for various different reasons, from illness and that kind of thing. But where we can, we try and find a positive destination for them all.
Thank you all for those answers. It shows that there is a wide range of support available. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, firstly, it was really good to hear the college talking about the change you've made to the employability skills at level 1. Even if it's 15 years since I first heard that asked of the college, and it's taken 15 years to do it, that is extremely worrying, but it's great that it's in place now. Employers have said again and again and again, this is the most important thing you can teach a young person. They can deal with the technical training if the young people actually have the right attitude, so that they are there to learn and there to work, and have the self-management skills to do that and so on. So it is extremely worrying that the schools are still using the same excuse that they can't do it because it's not on the national curriculum. I'm sorry, yes, they can. They can incorporate teamwork, they can incorporate self-management, they can incorporate project management, they can incorporate presentation skills in their lessons, in their normal subjects. It should be part of what they're learning, and we need to keep saying this to them. Because if they don't, they are massively damaging the people's employment prospects afterwards. For our cohort that we're responsible for the various different cohorts, do we actually monitor to make sure that each child has actually had the advice, or is it possible for somebody to slip through and be absent that day every time it comes up or something? Because I can imagine for some children they might be inclined to do that. So I guess that's Gail.
So do you mean the young people that we're working with who are not in education, employment and training? So no, they have a very they are assigned a personal advisor who they work with, and they stay with that personal advisor until they've got a positive destination, and the appointments are set up to suit their need. So they're not they don't really, you know, they are very persistent in tracking them down, and obviously the ones that aren't known are the ones that are very closely tracked, you know, and we do have a you know a good a really good team who go out there and they work with them all, and yeah, they're always working with their PAs.
Yeah, and the data that you provided supports that. Okay. Do they also get the soft skills training that I was talking about?
Yeah,
because a lot of them would have missed out on chunks of their education and so on. And
yeah, absolutely. So that's why a lot of them come through our health and wellbeing group first, and so that is very much based on the soft skills, and then they go on to more educational training and education afterwards.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions about work experience. First of all, work experience in Key Stage 4. My youngest is 18, so he was there a couple of years ago. And I think it was very difficult to find work experience opportunities. And I can absolutely understand why employers may not have the staff capacity, or that the nature of work may be prohibitive for that. But that aside, so what proportion of schools are children are getting that experience? But on a related note, is there anything that post-16 providers do to encourage young people to get part-time work if they want it? Because I encouraged both of mine to get part-time work while they were doing their A-levels, not because we needed the money, but actually it's really useful then for getting that first permanent job as an adult, because it shows you can get out of bed and you can turn up every day. If you're working in the service industry or retail, you can communicate more effectively with another grown-up. And I saw that it really, really increased their confidence doing that. So I'm really glad that I pushed them to do it, even though I didn't. So what support is available for young people to do that?
I'm happy to take that from the college perspective. Work experience is a huge part of what we do. We have a team that are dedicated to work with employers to provide work experience opportunities and industry placement for our T levels. It is a challenge, and we do our best to find those opportunities, but sometimes they're more local opportunities with regards to experiences we have in the college and events, and then but our main aim is that students go out and have that really effective work experience opportunity, which often leads to employment. And how we do that, we try and work with employers. So one of the things, we have a partnership with Silverstone, for instance, with our catering students. So that's a partnership that we've had for a number of years. And our catering students are 1 week in college learning and 1 week there at Silverstone in the catering kitchens, getting that employer experience, learning those employability skills, and that they have to be at college for 8 o'clock in the morning to get on the bus because that they're going to Silverstone, and they need to understand the expectations of that employer. So that's just one example of an employer we work with, and we plan that curriculum to provide those opportunities. They are then offered work opportunities with that employer. And so we have examples of that throughout the college. If we could have an opportunity like that for every student, that would be amazing. But that work experience is challenging for everyone to find that experience, but we work hard to try and make sure that students gain those skills and understand the importance of having that work experience and the opportunities then it can lead to.
So from our point of view, we have our young people. A lot of them come to us with very significant challenges, and many are suffering with mental health challenges in particular, and anxiety. So I think the first step before they can really even get, consider finding a Saturday job is building up their confidence and getting them to believe in themselves, so that they actually have that sort of, yeah, we can do it. And so I think that work experience, like Maria said, is vital for building that, and so that's why it's a key part, I think, and it's been recognised in schools now with the Gatsby benchmarks that and with the work experience element in schools is that it's all changing, and it's now from year 7 onwards rather than just year 10, and it's also for 2 weeks, and it has to have a meaningful outcome. So I think that's going to really help as well, prepare young people for work. But also I think, it's just we're seeing it more and more that they just, a lot of young people just don't have that confidence, and so I think that's what we need to really work on and build up, so that they feel like they really can work, and they don't feel like they can't do it, or they're not good enough, or anything like that.
I think across the piece, this is an area of challenge. I think that's what we're hearing. I think, there's a lot of people trying to link in with this agenda and to do well, but I think in terms of actually, it's really challenging actually getting these opportunities and working through with employers to get these opportunities secured. I guess if I was going to be super reflective, I'd consider, even from a local authority perspective, in terms of the number of opportunities around work experience that we provide, and maybe we could do more in this space. Maybe we could lead a little bit more and take that out then into the employment space with others, because I think it's difficult for us to be trying to work through, and for schools, etc., to be trying to work through, colleges working through with employers, when it's not something that we've necessarily taken a lead light on ourselves.
Thank you. Anything else, Tracy? Okay, John T.
Hello. So yes, I just wanted to also talk a little bit about work experience, because I've actually been here for my work experience, which I did last year. Did it at Milton Keynes Council in the transport department, and it was really good. But I think the biggest issue with it was actually getting the placement in the first place. And the main reason for that was because at my school, which is Radcliffe, so a maintained school, we had to get a placement from like a kind of family contact or somebody we already know in the placement. So luckily my mum has a friend who has a friend in the council, and she helped me get a placement, which was really kind of her. But it was at the point where there was only a few weeks left before I needed to take the placement, and I think a lot of people struggled, in my school especially, to get the opportunity to do work experience. And because there's such a wide range of departments at Milton Keynes City Council, I was wondering if there would be some sort of way that we could set up like a centralised way that people can apply for work experience, because I just had to go through individual officers, and I don't think individual officers really have the time to do kind of 2 jobs at once, in a way. And I was just wondering what we could do to solve that issue, especially with the you need to already know someone, because that really does limit people who might want to do something in the council and are interested in what the council has to offer, but don't know anyone that works there already. And I'm not sure who this question might go to, but yeah, whoever can answer it.
I can probably answer that one, because it's quite timely that you mentioned that, Jonty, because I'm part of a group where we're actually creating those pathways, and so hopefully I think the offer is going to be due out later this year, so it's going to be much more coordinated, and we are going to be offering schools students opportunities to come into the city council and work across lots of different departments in all different areas, so from facilities to IT, hopefully to community learning. So lots of different opportunities. So it's in hand.
Yeah, that's really good. But I was just going to also follow it up with, obviously, not only Milton Keynes City Council will offer work experience placements, a variety of employers will. And I think the biggest issue was that there wasn't really one place to look for the placements. You had to yourself go and email individual employers for a placement. And for young people who are just 14, 15 looking for work experience, we didn't really get given enough training, or we did get support on it, but we weren't really told you've got to go and be proactive about yourself. And I'm not sure it's really fair on some people who may be struggling in school and need to get that experience, because it kind of creates a divide, and we don't really want that when we're trying to get everyone to have equal opportunities. So I was just wondering if there's a way that maybe the council could work with other employers to create, like we're going to have a system in the council, somewhere that everyone can look for work experience. We can see the placements that are on offer, and then people can then find like emails, who they can talk to, someone that they can contact. I don't know if that's something we could do.
Thank you, Jonty. I think that's a really interesting idea. I think that's really helpful. I think, that's certainly something that we can look into. For starters, we've got to get it right ourselves. And that's, I hear your point loud and clear. And hopefully you're assured that it's something that we've recognised ourselves, and that we're trying to make amends in that space. In terms then of trying to facilitate a sort of portal more broadly, definitely something we can look into, definitely something to consider. Trying to do stuff on a sort of centralized digital platform makes sense. How easy that is to do, I don't know. We need to look at that. I think, what should be deliverable, though, is to have it so that there's a clearer offer that certainly schools are more aware of, and have it so that, that there are greater opportunities delivered through employers that then actually, I'm not sure it should be all down to the young people to go off and find those opportunities. I think actually that should be something that's very much supported and led with the people that are giving them those careers advice and guidance. So for me initially, I think that's probably more the route, is that actually we probably need to get more opportunities and to have it so that there is that greater network out there, and to have it so that actually the schools are better able to link people into those depending upon the routes they want to take, rather than again just have it so it's young people left to try and find that themselves. I mean, full credit to you for being able to do that. I appreciate how challenging it is.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really helpful.
Thank you, Jonty. Bissam?
Sorry. Basically, like after talking in our formals, we kind of discovered like our big problems that we found with work experience, but there's quite a few. But like I'll just give you like the main four. The first one was like transport. I don't know, for a lot of young people, like getting to work experience, that kind of cut us off getting any opportunity in the first place. Because if your parents are working and you can't afford the transport, you kind of have nowhere to go except your school or the primary school next to you. And like while that's good and all, it doesn't create much opportunity. This is mainly just for like state schools in Milton Keynes who aren't maintained. But obviously it's harder for the council to do things or ask things from schools who aren't maintained, or academy schools. And then the second thing we found was once you go to work experience, you have to like gain something out of it, like a reference, and most young people didn't know to ask for it, didn't get one, and it just kind of made it hard that once you got into or you wanted to get a job, you had no reference, you had no proof of doing a real work experience and being an asset or like proving yourself to that company. And then also it was like the choice. So the choice of the company deciding whether you can have 1 week or 2 week, because for some schools it will be like, okay, it's mandatory for you to have 2 weeks. And then if your company or the place you want to apply to makes their choice to only offer 1 week, you have nowhere to go. That was our kind of 3 big problems. And the fourth thing was that students with SEN, obviously, it's harder for them to get support from a place that needs work experience. So if you go to a work experience and you put down on your form that I have SEN, normally they'll put you on the back of the list, which obviously shouldn't happen.
Yeah, that's fine. I was busy just trying to type and capture. I think, thank you. There's some really helpful stuff I think that you've shared there. Firstly, in relation to the transport issue, I do recognise how that's a challenge. I think the aim would be to have it so that actually young people are able to then use the public transport network that's out there. I know that we have the all-in-one card. I don't know how well known that is then of people in terms of that makes then the public transport a lot more affordable. I think the challenge, given school travel support actually sits within my service area, so I'm quite familiar with that. It's something that if we're in a position where we're trying to arrange very bespoke stuff for everybody, it's incredibly expensive. We have significant challenges in relation to the budgets, just for the ones that we have statutory duty to be able to support. And they're typically children with very high level special educational needs that go into specialist provisions, and therefore they're not as close to the place that they live, and quite possibly will have it so that actually they've got siblings attending other schools as well at the same time, which makes that really challenging for the parents. Now that costs us a significant amount of money, and we spend a lot of time and resource trying to work out how to do that better and how to actually support that independence. I guess part of it, as you're saying, is the full experience is actually on also the independence around getting to work and being able to use the public transport routes as well. And possibly that's something that needs to be considered and worked on. I don't know how many young people then have the skills to be able to do that, know how to do it, etc. But I do appreciate that's a challenge, because that's something that we try and work through with people. I know Maria at college does quite a lot of work with that, with some of the college students around, that's part of supporting people into that, more adult workspace, isn't it, and adult life skills, about trying to just get around, which is great, because obviously that then really supports independence later on.
Getting public transport and navigating it is like obviously hard, but the harder bit is being able to afford it or know where to access it. Like the all-in-one card, I know it's a long while before you get your card, at least it was for me. And then most people don't know about it in the first place, and it's the constant changing of this route or that route of what the all-in-one card will give you for price-wise that makes it really hard. Also, if young people want to go back to that service that they worked at and they want to be like, can I get a job here, or can I come back here and do some part-time thing in the summer, I think the transport thing for like a long-term thing is a lot money-wise, and young people obviously don't have that much money.
Just one suggestion. But this is because I cycle everywhere. Cycling's brilliant, and you can literally, Milton Keynes is the best place for it with all the redways. So that's just a cheaper option. But, yeah, I know if it's out of Milton Keynes, it's not possible, but you can get across Milton Keynes quite quick on a bike.
Just also to respond, as Simon said, work experience is a lot more than just going out to that job. So how we look at it is we will speak to our employers through our employer engagement and work experience teams, and find out what the opportunities employers can offer for our students, and then we will ask them to write a job description. So our students then will look at the job descriptions that are available for work experience, and then they have to apply for that opportunity. So all the aspects of gaining employment they go through that application, then they have to have an interview, and it's competitive, as for all the reasons we've spoken about, but it's that whole experience, and not just the fact that actually the fantastic experience they get, well, you all get when you get there, but then like you say, the opportunities that follow on for that. So it's a real challenge, and something I think we collaborate in so many things, and it's something we can continue to discuss.
Yep, John T.
Yeah, I just wanted to also follow up with that and ask if maybe for the short 2-week period, maybe for those that are struggling financially, for example, if they're on free school meals, I'm not sure whether it already exists, but could there be some kind of financial support or help with travel costs? Because we don't want it to be that people who are having trouble financially have to then also pay for getting to the placement, because I just don't really think that's fair.
It's a really interesting point, John T. Certainly something, you know, as a local authority, I can speak with transport colleagues, etc., and see whether there's any flexibility around that. I don't know equally what ability there would be from schools to support around that, because obviously schools receive through additional funding for young people that are eligible under free school meals, and I would have thought probably primarily that's the sort of thing they might be able to assist with. I know, you know, certainly colleges, etc., will do bursaries around things like that. So I would have thought probably in the first instance it really should then come from schools, and that young people, again, it's how much people are feeling that they have to actually go and ask for it rather than it being better known. I think that's a point that's coming through strongly here, that maybe actually is that a consideration. That's a point I can take back.
Thank you. I'll just go to Jane, Jenny, and then Namrata.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the contributions from the young people, because that I think is quite powerful in itself. So thank you for that. I've got a couple of things, but if I can just stick with the work experience issue for a start. It is incredibly difficult for these young people to find places, and what you say about having to go hunting for yourself is absolutely true. Now, my group here on the council, we've had students coming in for work experience for about the last 3 years now. And, you know, we'd like to do more of it, but there are some mountains to climb. And for a business, you've got to think about whether you've got a member of staff that's safeguarding trained, has a DBS, that you've got the right public liability insurance, and that you've got the capacity within your time to give the young person the time they need. So there's a lot of mountains to climb. And I think we need to take that on board as to why we don't necessarily get enough people onto work experience. But I have a practical problem, and that is the 2 weeks for the work experience always comes at the same 2 weeks for every school across the city. You know, how daft is that? Now, I know that we have a curriculum, and I know we have to keep to exam timetables, but there must be some flexibility in there somewhere that we can actually push this around a bit, so we can offer the same placement to 2 or 3 young people through the year. So I'd like to sort of bring that one to the table, really. And what I'd like to say really is also about future challenges. We're talking a lot about 16 to 18 post stuff, but, you know, we know we've got a falling role in young people in this city. How are we preparing any of this work programme and this education programme to be able to meet their needs? And, you know, what are the challenges around that, and how are we going to manage future work skill needs in terms of lifelong learning as well for these young people to make them ready?
Thank you. think they're really helpful points that certainly I don't know the answer to why it is that most of them seem to fall within that same window. I suspect it's probably around the curriculum planning and when the certain dates are as to how they've planned that in line with the exams and everything else. But it's a point that I can take back to particularly to secondary schools as to what might be the challenges around that space and whether there's any ability to consider it differently. Yeah. In terms then of the fall in roles, etc., we know into the post-16 space. So I'm sure colleagues here will be familiar in terms of a lot of the demographics. At the moment, it's the secondary phase is currently at its fullest. The primary phase is certainly at its falling role stage. So we've got coming into the post-16, it will get tighter and tighter and tighter. The demand will come through significantly in that post-16 space for a few years to come, and then we'll start dropping off beyond that. But in terms of the needs and challenges that we're certainly seeing that rising as well at the same time. I know from the paper perspective as to what we've put out there, we do recognise the challenges in this space. We do recognise the fact that nationally there are a rising number of young people that aren't in education, employment and training. We know that whilst it's a relatively positive picture in Milton Keynes, we know that, percentage wise, even if we were stable, that would mean numbers wise it's still going up because actually those cohorts are growing. We know that actually the needs coming through are becoming more and more challenging, particularly because these are the cohorts that were really impacted by COVID. We know that a lot of young people after that period of time have struggled with larger spaces, busy school environments, and struggled in engagement, attendance, etc. We know nationally that's been a struggle. We know locally that's similar too. Here we've got some of the largest secondary schools in the whole country, and that's really challenging for young people who are struggling in those environments. So we're well aware that the challenge moving forward is just going to get harder and harder. That is something that as a collective we look across and see what are the trends, what are the changing demands and needs that we're seeing. As I say, ideally from my perspective and the work that Gail's team in particular do within my area, our intention is that the majority of the children are able to be supported within mainstream environments, whether that be at schools or whether that be at the college. That's certainly our intention. So we're particularly picking up and supporting the few, and that should be kept to a minimum wherever possible. At the moment, we are seeing those rising trends in young people coming through who are struggling just in the environments of the schools, those larger, more formal environments. And that's really tricky when actually, a lot of children before who would have struggled within the school environments succeed really well in the college. Well, actually, the college is equally a really busy environment, whilst it's far less formal than at a school, and that suited a lot of young people previously. Actually, if just going through the same entrance as everybody else, if going into the same areas as everybody else is a struggle for them, that's really difficult. A lot of the time, the way that the funding all works is based on numbers, and therefore that's why the classrooms are the sizes they are. But actually we're looking at that now because we're seeing that that's a growing challenge for us, and that's something that we need to respond to as a local system. We're currently therefore having discussions with college in particular about how we might address that, what opportunities that might there be to be able to deliver and support those cohorts. But we do recognise that the needs coming through and that the future for a good few years is going to be more challenging.
Thank you. I'll just go on to Jenny.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to reiterate the message about needing a clearinghouse for work programme. That's the thing I most often hear employers say, that they are absolutely tearing their hair out trying to find how to connect with people who need the placements. So please, 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 could we have at least a basic clearinghouse between the employers and the education providers to tell them that this employer is interested? Can somebody liaise with them to work out, as you say, to do all the details of working out what makes a viable work experience programme? I know the schools do that if you offer, because we've had that, we've had the quiz back from them. But they have no means of getting to the employers have no means of getting to them. So please, can we have that clearinghouse just at that basic level? Something Jane said, yeah. Oh, and no, can I go back to the previous question I asked, because I missed out the care experience and the SEND groups? Are we making sure that they actually do get the provision they're supposed to get in the way of careers advice and work experience and so on? Do we actually monitor that for the children that we have some responsibility for? Because those are groups that are quite likely to drop out of some of the placement, drop out of some of the things and may not get everything that's provided.
Yeah, absolutely. When I referred to earlier about the work that we do, particularly in Gail's area around the supporting the vulnerable groups, there again, the groups that we have advisors specifically linked into supporting those cohorts. So it would be the care experience. We've got somebody within the SEND group, youth offending, so very specifically targeted at those groups to work through and develop those relationships and make sure they do get that advice and guidance.
Thank you. I'll just go to Namrata, David, and then Mandy and Bisak.
Thank you. I have a quick question on the Connect to Work program. It sounds like a fantastic initiative. Just wanted to know how it's shared with the people who need it. Is it like shared with schools, and how do you collect data on how many people have enrolled and what have the outcomes been for those? Thank you.
Okay, so Connect to Work is a national programme run by, financed by the DWP, and they've commissioned local authorities to deliver this, and Milton Keynes is delivering it as part of the South Midlands region. So we have a website, and we started the programme November last year, and so far we have 51 participants on the programme, and basically it's a supported employment program, so it's for people who have who may have long-term disability, illness. They may have been in prison, they may have been homeless, drug or alcohol dependent, care experienced. So they have to be eligible for the program, and then they have a year to stay on the program. And so there's a lot of publicity nationally as well as locally on the program, but if anybody's interested, it's the South Midlands Connect to Work website. If you have a look, and anybody that is eligible for the programme and suitable, they can just make an expression of interest on the website. It's not Milton Keynes specific. It's South Midlands. So we started it, like I said, in November, and our peak delivery in 3 years' time, we aim to help 500 people per year in Milton Keynes onto the programme. So hopefully it's a really great programme, and I think it's really good because everybody that is on the programme has is basically they have support into their workplace, and the work that is found with them is what they want to do. So it's not just hopefully work, it's a career. So we'll keep you updated because it's just literally started.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. I wasn't going to come back, given the time. I would very, very quickly. I think these are yes/no answers, really. I touched in my first question about an MK university. So a simple question is, in your opinion, for your expertise, is not having a Milton Keynes university holding Milton Keynes back? That's my first question. I think that comes into post 16 as far as or post 18 as far as I'm concerned. And the second thing as well is, Gail, given your job title, are you the right person for me to come and talk to about lifelong learning? Because I think this is going to be the big issue over the next 5-10 years, reskilling time and time again, and how we're going to be set up to deal with that as a city moving forward. I'd really like to talk to someone about that, but I think that's too big a subject for this evening.
yes, please come and talk to me about it. That's fine.
Yeah, with regards to the wider point about is not having a university holding people back. Yes, sorry, holding the city back. In all honesty, I don't know in terms of the data, etc. What I do know is that, especially in the current position, which adds to the massive complexity we have around the post-16, post-18 spaces, actually there's now so many other pathways, and from my point of view, I think it's about us promoting those other pathways. I don't think you do have to go off to university. I don't think it is, as was certainly when I was younger, and those routes. And I think part of the challenge, coming back to the voices that we've heard of the young people, is about navigating through that process, where actually a lot of the advice, guidance that people get is coming through from parents, etc., who, it's a very different system now as to what it was when the parents were younger. And I think there's so many more opportunities. The whole apprenticeships is very different now. The fact that actually it's not always just going and finding an apprenticeship as a route into employment. Actually, even once you're in employment in an organisation, you can then call on the apprenticeship levy that organisations will have paid into and are therefore keen to be using that, even if it's to upskill existing staff and support those staff on a journey within them. So I don't think that having a university is certainly the be all and end all. I know that from that point of view, typically we would lose some people outside of Milton Keynes in relation to when they do go off and study. But equally, especially through COVID, a lot of universities have moved into having the online distance learning facilities as well. So actually you don't need to go off and be site-based, which obviously now with the cost of courses, accommodation, it's really significant. And actually, if you can study distance learning, particularly whilst you're working at the same time, that's a really attractive offer. So I don't think it's as significant a point as it used to be. But clearly it would still be lovely to have a university here and have that option available. But
Sorry, can I just add to that point slightly, Councillor Hopkins? I think for me, we've discussed it quite a lot. I do think a university would bring value to Milton Keynes and the opportunities for our young people in Milton Keynes. But we've got to recognise, of course, there's about 33% reduction in graduate jobs than there were 5 years ago. The nature of the workplace is changing fast and changing significantly, even in the sense of talking to certain employers about what we used to be traditionally very kind of jobs we'd all be encouraged into at some times about being such things as accountants. The question is now, is those jobs are going to be available going forward? The AI developments, the different ways approaching employers, looking at the different profile of what they need, and it's changing so fast. We're trying to get ahead of this. I do believe, though, that actually if we look at university differently in relation to how it works, perhaps over a full work year as opposed to an academic year, if we can recognise that it can be a mixed economy within both a workplace and a university option, etc. I think there's lots of options there, but I do think a university will welcome in Milton Keynes, but perhaps not as we used to know universities, and I think that's the critical thing.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back, Gail, to the young people that, as Simon talked, to post-pandemic have had challenges, perhaps couldn't get an assessment in terms of neurodiversity, experiencing mental health, couldn't then find a way to stay in education. Parents had taken them out, home educated, and that might have gone on for years and years with no input. Young people just at home, if their parent could teach them something, or if the young person could teach them something themselves, then they may have had some input in terms of education, but for years they may have not, and lost confidence and lost trust in going out into that workplace, or into even connecting to the health and wellbeing group, would see that as a huge step. are those the young people that are sitting within those figures, which are really low? I'm really proud to see that in terms of national and local regional numbers, but are those the young people that are mainly sitting in that space? And do you reach out to them if they're home educated and not coming forward to you? How does that work? Thank you.
I can probably start off in relation to that. Just in the pre-16 space, as I'm sure many colleagues here will be aware, people don't have to seek any approval to home educate their young people. They can just decide to do so. And it's as simple as writing to the school and saying, I've decided to withdraw my child to home educate them or educate them otherwise than at school. And then the school has to remove them from roll. So there isn't a significant barrier to people doing that, and people legally don't have to have even applied for school in the first instance. So we know from national discussions that, tracking, etc., in relation to that can be a challenge. However, in Milton Keynes, we've got really, really robust systems. So as soon as schools are notified, because the parents have to write in and let them know, the schools then give that information across to our service area, my service area, and we then follow that up with the family to investigate the suitability of the home education. Now, that suitability, is challenging to check through because they don't need to be following a curriculum as such, or the national curriculum. They have to be following a curriculum, but it has to be appropriate for their age, ability and aptitude. And things like that sort of social engagement is part of that. So when we're assessing, we have a plan program of education that we send out. It's a template which supports people to then give us the information that we would need to then assess whether or not that information is suitable as to what the young person's getting. If we either don't receive it through or if there's gaps, then we'll arrange for a colleague to go out and do a home visit, etc., around how suitable that is, and then have the discussions with them as to, well, why might they have chosen to leave the education system. And actually, unless it was necessarily for a positive reason, consider actually if it's a scenario that you're setting out where actually they're not being able to get that fulfillment and delivered well, maybe it's about supporting them back into the education system. If people aren't engaging at all with that, then we'll progress through and we'll do a school attendance order and they will go back to the education system, because obviously they've got a legal right to be educated, and that's our responsibility to take action when it's not taking place. So in the main, I feel that we're well sited with regards to a lot of the young people that are home educated, and that we're making sure that home education is suitable. However, in terms of that advice and guidance that they're then getting around the next steps, and depending upon what it was that they were seeking to do, we make sure that in my children missing education team that kind of work through with all of those cohorts and keep those suitability checks going, because we review them annually as well. We then make sure that in the year 11 cohorts that we're passing all of those details over to then the teams in Gail's area that then work through with the post-16 needs. So they contact every single one of those families in advance and then offer out that support guidance, check what it is that they're doing at those next steps, and try and then work through with them as to, what's the risk of them not having anything at the post-16, and then what routes and opportunities might they have, and if that is the sort of people that we then need to pick up. It's great for Gail to then say less of those ones, more about probably the ones that are then more what I'd say then section 19 or EOTAS, where we've been told that they're not able to access anything at that moment in time. We know that they're not able to access stuff. We're well cited in what they've been able to access, and we know that they're not in anything that's formalised at that moment in time. And as a local authority, we've had to put a package in place for them. So they're ones that wouldn't then naturally necessarily fit in the normal groups and pathways that we've got. But I don't know, Gail, if you want to give a bit more information around that.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some young people who don't want to engage with this as well, and I think they perhaps some of the ones that you're thinking about, Mandy, because they are they're very the team try to engage with everybody, but some young people just don't want to engage or can't engage. And sometimes if they're not able to because of their health as well, they perhaps they're seeking health care instead at that particular moment, but they can then go back into education, training or employment later on. So but yeah, everybody that will engage and can engage, we engage with.
Thank you. And I think, like I said, there are people that just do fall through all of those nets that you've talked about, and increase in numbers. And that's my biggest worry in education, and seeing that going from an even younger age with a situation I know about, not in this local area, but where someone couldn't transition to secondary, has been out now for 18 months doing, some work at home, has now been taken into home education. And the future looks quite bleak for that young person. But yes, so there are people that do fall through all of those nets. And yeah, thank you for the work you're doing that tries to capture them where you can, but not everyone is possible. Thank you.
Just to continue the response, we work very closely together and to support those young people. So the transition, if we have young people at college that actually at that point in time college is not the right space for them, we will talk to Gail and Simon, the team, and to discuss what is right. And if there's students that you're working with and actually integration into college is then right, we work together to see what packages we can put in place. And we're talking at the moment about how we can expand that, and as a college, how we can find space for those students that find it really difficult to come into our doors with 3,800 other students. And it's about having the right space and support to enable them to come along to college, and for us to work together to make that opportunity available for our young people.
Thank you very much. This is a really great debate. So what I'm going to do is just open it one more time. So Bissam, John T, Jenny, and then myself. Is there anyone else that wants to say anything? Brill, thank you. Bissam, if you go ahead.
Sitting here that I didn't know as a young person, and I'm very sure none of my friends knew. But I think I still have 2 more questions. Firstly, this is really infeasible, even saying it, but is there anything we can do as a council or schools can do to make sure that businesses don't give a choice to young people? So it's accessible, whether it's 2 weeks or 1 week, or they get a reference, or when they apply to another job, what are they going to get out of it? And then secondly, about promoting, like, again and again, I think social media is the biggest tool. I think nowadays it's one of the only ways you're going to be able to access young people feasibly. And what are you going to do? And how are you going to use it to really ensure that young people are available to get like all these work experiences or job opportunities? Is there any way we can use it? Or is there any way we could do job fairs or mandatory presentations in schools? But again, schools, some are academies, some are not, so it's a really difficult thing to manage.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, whether a school's an academy or maintained, we work with all the schools regardless of the type of school. There's a collective group in terms of secondary school heads that meet together, and these are points that I can put across to them as feedback from this group, particularly in relation to the point around people knowing about getting the reference at the end of it. I think that's something that should be fairly quick and easy as a solution. So that's really helpful to then pick up. In relation to sort of, I suppose, ensuring that businesses do offer 2 weeks, I think that's a real challenge, because from our point of view, it's trying to get anybody to then be working through and offer work experience. And I think we've heard some, practical examples of how we do that, but the challenges even for employers in that space. So whilst I'd love to be able to have that position, I think at the moment we're in a scenario where actually if people are saying they're able to offer 1 week, then that's fantastic in itself. I know we'd want more, but actually if we can get more and more people even just offering a week, then maybe there's the opportunity a week here and a week there, and that could be possible. So I think that's a really interesting point. We certainly need to grow the offer.
Thank you. John T.
Hi. So I just wanted to talk about the university a little bit because I was very interested in what you both had to say about it. And as a young person thinking of going to university somewhere, obviously I'm not completely sure yet. I'm in year 11, so I'm not completely sure yet on where to go. But I know I have friends who feel like staying in Milton Keynes for a university would be beneficial to them, especially in terms of accommodation, because obviously renting in university is expensive. And if you can stay with your parents, although that's not always desirable, if you still want to go down the path of a university, I think a university in Milton Keynes would be really beneficial to the thousands of children who might not be able to afford to rent in somewhere like London or somewhere even further afield. So I think that would be beneficial. But then also on Mac's point about how a university would have like a changing provision, especially in the future. I think what's interesting, especially regarding Milton Keynes, is the fact that we've got the hospital, we've got so many different businesses and employers. So I was wondering if a university built here could also integrate some kind of industry experience as well, so that you can ensure that if people wanted to do vocational technical qualifications but maybe also get a degree, so something similar to a degree apprenticeship but still in the university, would that be something that we could offer in a Milton Keynes university?
Yes, your comments are very welcome, and I'd agree with a lot of them. I think in the sense of how universities are changing and needing to change, in the economics alone, many universities existing at the moment, even though they're giving some national universities giving very high levels of academic delivery, they are not able to financially keep going in their current model. So there is going to have to be some real considerations, certainly with the Department of Education that I discuss with. Certainly that's the way I think it's the right way forward to do. We've talked about here in the past the potential of, say, a STEM university, that science, technology, engineering, maths, because that may be where a lot of future jobs may lie. But again, it's such a fast moving thing. But I think, John, your points are right, and largely points I'd align with, and so what I would advocate where I sit. But obviously it's a very expensive provision, and a lot of conversations with a lot of partners would need to kind of be in alignment before we're able to achieve it. But your point's right, and I would largely agree with them.
Thank you, Jenny.
Two points really rather than questions. One on the work experience. I can't stress how useful it is to have opportunities to do work experience that didn't come from your family, because your family will probably know the sorts of jobs that they do, and that really narrows the opportunities for a child who doesn't fit with those jobs. If they wanted those jobs, they could probably find work experience, but if they're struggling, it's because they don't want those jobs. The second is back to the question of the kids that slip through the net. I've had several SEND cases where they have been, or almost certainly SEND, because mostly the massive delay in getting assessments is a part of the problem. So they're treated as trouble kids when actually later on, when they get into the youth justice system, they're assessed as having needs that weren't diagnosed because they never got to the assessment. That is really, really important. But because of that, they're excluded from school, so they lose all the opportunities, and the virtual head system does not seem to be working that well, and the amount of schooling they get through that is ridiculous. In that 2 hours a week seems to be fairly common from the cases I've had, and that is not going to get them anywhere in the 14 to 16 age group to prepare for the 16 to 18 age group. And we're talking about kids who are sometimes excluded for years at a time, waiting for an assessment. I'm sorry, but something is going really badly wrong with that system, and that will then lead to real problems when they come to try and engage with work or post-16.
Thank you very much for that addition, Jenny. That has been noted. What I'll do now is I'll just quickly ask my questions, if that's okay. To Gail, I wanted to ask about the Connect to Work. Is there a closing date and is there a limit on the number of eligible students?
Because it's not till 2030, so you've got plenty of time, and it's there isn't a limit at the moment. It's just what capacity our advisors have to work with people on the programme. So because of the supported employment regulations, they can't have a caseload of more than 25 per person. So if we get to that limit and people aren't moving into employment, then there won't be places until those people have moved into employment. But hopefully, we've already got, I think it's now 6 into work from the programme. So, it should be a constant thing.
Thank you.
I think just to add into that because it's effectively the DWP that are commissioning, but through a local area. It's not a direct contract with us. Our contract is with the local area, and that local area has a target number. So that's the challenge. It's kind of limited by the amount of funding that would be available through the DWP and then out to the local area to then deliver on. That's why we were very keen to get in there quick and early and start delivering as much as we can to then benefit Milton Keynes. But clearly every area across the local area will be looking to do that. And as Gail says, it is then very much effectively payment by results, by the fact that actually it's on the starts that you get, but you have to then have a time period of supporting them into employment. So it's very much worked in line with what you're able to process. But what we don't want to do then is firstly, the quality needs to be right in terms of what we're able to provide out to people, because it's time limited. We need to make sure that we're linking in and getting the employment opportunities for people, and therefore linking through with employers. And these will be people that are, often the furthest from the job market, which is the whole point of the scheme, and therefore that takes quite a lot of time and effort. So we need to make sure that we deliver that well. So we don't want to just go and try and flood ourselves with lots of people that we then can't afford to actually keep going, because we're not being able to support them out the other end.
Thank you. And then my other question was in relation, just taking it back to employer engagement. My question was, how do we ensure employer engagement reaches young people, for example, without family or social capital, not just those already advantaged? So what are we doing to work with employers to ensure that they take these students on?
Sorry, can you just recap that question for me? Sorry.
Yeah. So in essence, what I'm asking is, what are we doing with local employers, like, for example, small or medium-sized enterprises, to make sure that we're providing the support for them as employers to get students in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from our point of view, with the young people and the cohorts that we're working through with, both actually in the young people, but also in the adult space, that's where the supported employment models that we specifically deliver are really important, because it's about trying to work through with the people we're supporting, but with the employer as well, and to have it so that it works for both parties. Success to us is having it so that you've got somebody independently in employment. What we can't have is the point that we identify the opportunity, we link them together. The reason that we're supporting is because the cohorts that we're working with, particularly when we're working with young people and adults that have learning needs, we can't just say that's it, you got a job and walk off. It's actually about trying to support that arrangement to get it so that actually they can both work with each other. They know how each other work. And that's why it does take that time period for it to, I suppose, for us to embed that practice, to have it so that the employer knows how to support the people, and that the people know to ask for advice, guidance, support, which can often be a challenge, and that then that's the point at which we pull out, and that's why it has to be done so carefully to make sure that that's successful. So there's a lot of work that Gail and her team do around making sure that that is successful, particularly with the employer. We go out, that's the big piece of work that we do around that employer engagement, is trying to have the open and honest conversations with people in the first instance about, is this something that you fundamentally and in principle want to join into? Does it work for you as an organization? A lot of people really then buy into those values, want to do it for the point of supporting these cohorts of people, but it's got to be in the right environments that will make them successful, support the business as well, and have it so that they're a real asset. And so it's just trying to get that, I suppose, marriage together as to when it works. But I think when you're pitching that point, people really get that and want to work with us around it. It's then just trying to support and make it successful. So we do a lot of work with employers in that space.
Thank you. Some final one, and then we'll go to recommendations.
Okay, sorry, quick little thing. Basically, students would sometimes have this feeling that obviously we learn about discrimination acts in school and stuff, and how adults aren't like allowed to be forbidden a job based on their race or gender or disability or etc. But sometimes I think with work experience it's like overlooked. And I know because I have a visual impairment, when I was applying to a job, or not a job, a work experience, I was kind of worried that I wouldn't get it. And I know 1 or 2 places came back to me and they were like, we can't meet these access arrangements, please try somewhere else. Is there anything we can do to help with that?
I think it's constantly ensuring that employers have got all the most up-to-date information, I think, and ensuring that they're well cited on what adjustments can be made. And I think part of going back to Simon's point with the Connect to Work, for example, is that we actually go out and we educate employers as to reasonable adjustments that can be made, and and also selling the benefits of having a more diverse workforce. And I think that it's definitely changing and it's getting a lot better. But I totally agree with you that there is still work to be done. But it's just about everybody educating employers and them educating us really as well. It's a two-way thing about how we can improve things. And I do think that a lot of we're lucky in Milton Keynes that a lot of employers are disability aware, and they are inclusive. And I've been to some small business meetings over the last few months, and a lot of them I speak about supported internships as well as Connect to Work and everything else, and they're all very interested, and they all come up to me at the end and like, well, how can we get involved? So sometimes it's maybe they just don't know, but so I think it's our job to go out there and spread the word and educate them more.
I think as well, just on a final point on that, I think this links into Jonty's point really nicely, actually, about the sort of digital platform, etc. And whilst I think there can be lots of merits in that, I think then it's that point at which you're getting pushback that really, if you're being supported through the school to go and make that application, hopefully the work that ourselves, schools, etc., will do with employers beforehand helps to support them as to what they can do in this space. But actually, when there is that pushback, you're then not just left alone trying to then think, well, actually, do I go back to them, or do I just say, oh, that's really disappointing, maybe I'm not going to be successful? That's, I think, where you do that hands-on support, and that's probably why I think there is that responsibility that it should be led by the professionals that are supporting you.
Right, thank you everyone. That was a wonderful debate and discussion we've had this evening. I have got some recommendations that I'll read out, and then if anyone has any, please feel free to add, and then we can take it from there. So the first one that I have is that officers explore opportunities to provide more placements at MKCC. The second one is that officers look into providing a central service or database for work experience placements in Milton Keynes, and that officers look into what financial support Transport Department can offer for 2 weeks work experience. That officers liaise with schools with regards calendar dates or schedule for work experience and explore if this can be done in phases across Milton Keynes Central, and also report back to the committee. That officers also report back to committee regarding Connect to Work once they have sufficient data available, and that officers raise with secondary heads the expectations and needs of work experience placements, such as references for students. Yes, Georgina, Jenny, Salima, anyone else?
Just on your final point, is there something a little bit further in terms of, we've had a really interesting report that talks about the provision that's provided, and then our young representatives in the room have said, we don't know some of that, and actually maybe the quality of what is being delivered isn't where you think it is. Is there something about a triangulation piece that says there are 10 secondary schools, they've got careers advice and guidance, they're delivering 10 sessions a year, and the students are feeding back and saying the quality of what is being delivered is good enough? You know, that's what I think we need to hear more of, is the triangulation of what our young people are saying about the provision that's being provided.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to that. Thank you. Jenny?
Yes, I'd like to get in my recommendation that we go back to the schools and ask them to do more on teaching the soft employability skills, along with as part of their natural curriculum lessons, because I really don't think it's good enough that they use that as an excuse. There's plenty of opportunity to teach those skills as part of along with the curriculum subjects.
Thank you. Yes, Salima.
Just going back to your first recommendation where council make work experience available, also can we expand that to like subcontractors like Ringway and other partners that work with the council and open it up a little bit more? Thank you.
Is that in relation to transport?
Making work experience opportunities, your first recommendation, Chair.
Do you mind just repeating again for me? Sorry.
So just opening it up to subcontractors and partners with the council.
Thank you. Okay, so with the updated one, so the first one is now revised, that officers explore opportunities to provide more placements at MKCC with including subcontractors and partners. Yeah. Just need to write that down. And the one in relation to, yeah, please go ahead.
So we had one which is that officers liaise with schools to ensure soft employability skills are included as part of the curriculum. Yeah, and then the last one was, you might need to help me with the wording on this one slightly, but that a wider piece of work seeking feedback from the 10 secondary schools on the quality of advice and guidance provided around work experience. Sorry, yeah.
Thank you, John T.
I was just going to ask, was there a recommendation to do with ensuring that the opportunities were available to everyone, regardless of like family connections or knowing people in the placement?
Thank you. Jane, did you have one? No? Yeah.
Yes, Chair. I was just going to request that that we keep this on the agenda, bearing in mind the bulk and the hump we're going to have, and perhaps it returns to committee in, say, 2 years, Matt? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and also to thank the Youth Council for bringing the subject to the table. Thank you very much.
I think you deserve a round of applause. Thank you very much. Are we agreed on those? Thank you. John T. Bissam, thank you for being with us this evening. You're free to leave if you would like, or you can remain on the table with Lisa, anyone. Thank you once again. Thank you for bringing this topic. Thank you all for that. No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you. So I'll now move on to item 7 of the agenda, which is SEND update. So our next item is to consider the report on SEND. You'll find the papers for the item on pages 27 to 66 of the agenda pack. Mim, would you like to introduce this item for us? Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee asked for an update around SEND government announcements and also the recommendations of the Task and Finish group. And in the report, you'll see, I thought it would be helpful to kind of consider this within the context of the broader changes that have happened over more than a decade. So SEND is an area that's been changing significantly for a very long time. It's also an area where we've seen growth in terms of the number of children and young people being identified with an SEN need, and also an increasing request for additional funding and additional provision for those children and young people over that period of time. So there has been lots and lots of kind of government announcements, government plans, government initiatives that have started, and some are still continuing, some finished and reported back on kind of what they thought the recommendations should be. And we are waiting at the moment for a white paper that we are expecting potentially sometime this quarter, but we don't yet have a date. And we have been waiting for this white paper for quite some time. So really an area where we have a huge amount of change that we're managing on an ongoing basis, but obviously a significant number of children and young people whose needs we must meet now, regardless of that kind of changing landscape. In Milton Keynes, we had our local area partnership inspection 2 years ago. And so we also have the kind of recommendations from that inspection that we are looking at and working on constantly. We have our new strategy that we developed, we co-produced last year, which is our strategy from 2025 to 2028. So significant amounts of change, but the key thing really over the last kind of decade is that locally we're mindful of all of the changes that are happening, of all of the national things that are happening, but we also make it a real priority to ensure that we are looking at what's happening locally and what do we need to do. So, for example, with our strategy, we chose to go kind of to make sure that we redevelop that and co-produce that with our local area. despite the fact that at the time we were expecting that white paper to be delivered at any point, and obviously we're still waiting for the white paper now. So the last year we also had our the Task and Finish group, which provided a significant number of recommendations around SEND at around about the same time that we were co-producing our new strategy, and around about the same time that we were kind of building in all of those inspection priorities. So we were always kind of pulling in the information and insights that we're gaining around SEND from various different places and areas, and trying to pull them all into our strategic plan and kind of make sure that we're delivering them in that way. So we recently did a piece of work around looking at the 5 priorities that have been identified, or 5 principles, sorry, that have been identified by government, which will drive the reforms, and comparing them against the strategy that we developed locally to kind of make sure that were we on the right track in terms of what we're expecting to see next. And we were quite pleased to see that our local priorities and the things that are important to us locally do align quite well with, or very well with, the principles that have come out for reform. So we're hopeful that when the white paper is released, that we will be in a position to be able to make any pivots that we need to within the plans that we already have, to be able to respond to that. But obviously we kind of await that paper to see what will happen at that point. The Task and Finish group recommendations were all considered as part of our strategic plan, and we have built them into our strategy. So the strategy has 3 kind of principles, 3 priorities, with 10 priorities that sit underneath. And within each of those, there are a number of different projects that deliver improvements around specific areas of SEND. We have working groups that work on all of those things, that report back through our governance, and our governance includes the 3 sort of priority areas. So that's Thrive, Belong, and children and young people being at the heart of our plans. And it also includes a partnership board that meets quarterly. So that's a broad representation from our partnership. So that's our NHS Trust, our Integrated Care Board, our schools and settings, including further education and early years, our Parent Carer Forum, and our local authority colleagues across education and social care. And we also have an executive board that oversees our progress and operational delivery for SEND. I hope that's a good summary of kind of the work that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Mim, for that. So I'll now take contributions or questions from members of the committee. Please indicate if you would like to speak. Tracy and Jane. Thank you.
As chair of the Task and Finish group, thank you very much for, paying that a lot of attention and trying to incorporate that into your strategy. I felt it was a really difficult group to chair, because it would have been really easy to sit there and, notionally spend money that you haven't got. So we tried to be really pragmatic with our suggestions. And I just want to acknowledge, there is great work going on. We talked about ordinarily available provision at the last meeting, and I've been noting the number of SEND units that are coming online, which should hopefully have a massive impact. I think it is really difficult to fully scrutinise this without knowing what's going to be in that government white paper. I had heard the end of February, but who knows? Who knows whether that's true or not? What else did I want to say about that? Yes, so most of you will be aware that my day job is working for Emily Darlington, the MP, and I don't know whether this makes the situation feel worse from my perspective, but the number of complaints we have about the length of time to assessment, the length of time to get their EHCP, the number of parents going to tribunal, the number of complaints that are into the council. I don't know if that's just the experience I'm getting, so it'd be useful to get a comment on that, where we are with kind of like waiting times and figures and what have you. And I think last of all, the SEND strategy looks fantastic, But I think we need, and I hate it when people say this because you can't measure everything with numbers. I think we do need some more definitive ways of measuring the success of this strategy, because it is only over 3 years. So when we have information coming back to this committee, what are we going to be looking for? Because the evidence of change at the moment, some of these are a little bit wishy-washy, if I'm honest, sorry. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, thank you. They're really good points. And Mim works for the partnership, so she works across education, health, and social care. And I think the points that you're raising are mostly in the education space, hence my answer. And the answer with regards to the assessment is that what was originally happening was that a national shortage in educational psychologists was meaning that there was a backlog in relation to carrying out the assessments. You'll be aware that there's a section within the plan that has to, by law, be completed by a qualified educational psychologist. And that's a difficult thing to achieve. It's a doctorate. And B, there has been a kind of a shift in returns of where educational psychologists would like to work across the country, including an option to work for agencies that pay really high pay in relation to what we'd like to pay at local government level. And we were, for some time, I'm going to say, continuing to try and recruit to those posts, trying to find a way in which to make ourselves different, have a unique selling point, trying to make people understand that obviously Milton Keynes is a special place to come and work. But it had to come to a point where we realised that that was not going to cut it. There's such a national shortage. Everyone's so much in the same position, and the attraction of other things was so great that actually we weren't getting to that point. And when you're paying agency staff to then do the work, you're not getting the investment locally, you're not necessarily getting the same quality, and it's more expensive. So we changed gear, and what we did was we came up with a twofold plan for ensuring that we catch up with the backlog of assessments. One was to first commission out the education psychologist piece of the assessment process and enable that to be done by people that enjoy doing that and that are happy to just do that, and to instead retain the really high quality staff that were invested in inclusion and working with schools to ensure that SEND needs are met at SEND support stage wherever possible, and that reasonable adjustments are made, and that we have a workforce that's really well trained in being able to offer that ordinarily available provision that you're talking about, which that can stop the escalation of need in the way that I know you'll understand. So that was the first part of the plan. We've completed that part of the plan. Where we are now is that part of the plan then being written up as a whole plan, which is subject to the capacity of our SEND teams. And only last week I was having a conversation about where we are with that. If I'm a parent and I'm waiting an assessment of my child's needs, how long can I be expected to wait? What are the timelines? I think most parents and carers are reasonable people to understand that the national system is broken. That's what we're hearing. There needs to be reform. But in the meantime, what's the plan for their child? What can they reasonably expect from us? And I think most reasonable parents would take an honest answer if we were able to give that. One of the issues that we've got is that the team are currently working on ensuring that every child that's due to transition to a new point in September has an assessment completed and has been through that process and had a name placement for September. Because I know you'll know that, for example, at secondary, we've got National Offer Day coming up on the 1st of March, and the EHCP children take precedence over those spaces. So Simon will be shouting at Vic, our head of SEND, saying how many places are there going to be at the Radcliffe that need EHCPs so that I can ensure that we can then allocate the balance of those places. So that's not an excuse, it's just a material consideration in regards to actually sometimes we have to kind of stop the queue and go, right, prioritise this and then move forward. We've recently put up a statement on our local offer, which is the website that we use. It's that contains all information pertaining to SEND that we keep up to date to ensure that there's one place to go to, which shows the latest timeline with regards to assessment. And I'm looking at Mim because I know you were involved in that statement. I'm thinking we've said that by the end of this summer term, we will be caught up on all assessments. Your second question has gone from my mind.
It was around figures.
Yes. So the SEND Exec Board met, I'm going to say, last week, and one of the key considerations that we had was around a dashboard and the quality of the indicators that we have within their dashboard that show impact. Because I think that's what you're talking about. How will we know what we're achieving? We had a robust debate within that board with regards to what the indicators should be, and then what the targets should be for improving those indicators, and how we as a board are going to hold each other to account in terms of doing that. So yeah, they're not in here. So there's more of a narrative in here than there is the data. But the SEND Exec Board that Mim's already talked about is very clear that that's where we need to be focusing our time, and in the development of that dashboard and the regular reporting on that dashboard and regular challenge where we believe. And that's not just in assessments, that's on, you know, health data as well, where we're not necessarily seeing the shift that we would want to see as quickly as we can. In the inspection, they were very clear that strategic use of data is something that we need to improve on. And I think we'd all acknowledge within the partnership that we are continuing to need to improve in that space. So I think it's a really pertinent question, but one that we're aware of and that we have a plan to address.
Can I just also reference, if that's okay, Councillor Bailey, your wider point, which is about the working in Emily Darlington's office and the challenges in regard to complaints, etc. Because I think I interestingly wrote to around SEND to Emily's office today, actually, in a question that's been raised, and one of the challenges she was raising, which is like you seeing a number of concerns in this area, was about the fact of she'd been told how the service were directing certain parents not to go and access schools, for example, and had to be clear that is not the case. And I suppose what I would reference in this as an example is that we're clear as directors of children's services nationally, this is our number one biggest challenge, and it's our number one biggest concern because it is not serving children well. The system is doing the opposite, and actually it's become a very combative and adversarial space, which is not helping children, schools, local authorities, parents, and indeed the taxpayers' finances. So there's a number of challenges we have consistently on a kind of national level, both individually and also as association, as a body, around the fact of the importance of us seeing change in this space. We are yet, as we've said, to see the white paper. Even when the white paper arrives, it obviously won't be the great panacea. There's still a long journey to be had. I think part of the challenges I think we're in at the moment is our inability to flex in regard to a very rigid system, which obviously does set us up oppositionally. Some of the problems we do have in regard to the number of complaints that you referenced is that we're trying hard to mitigate the big challenge we have of, for example, parents who are understandably frustrated and often justifiably frustrated in this space, emailing everybody they can think of, MP, Chief Executive, Leader of the Council, Director of Children's Services. We're asking them consistently to go through a particular route that for some parents they're finding difficult in this because it's not giving them the responses they want. So again, the traffic is quite high, and we're constantly trying to find a way of, if you like, kind of bringing down the volume, which is easy to say and hard to do. Part of the challenges, of course, is a sense of part of the understanding behind the processes that have to go through. So a parent, for example, may say, I've made a referral for a EHCP plan, it's 2 years and I still haven't got one. needless to say, they may not have got one because it was considered that that child might not be eligible for one. But because they disagree with that, will continue to be pushed and be pushed into that oppositional space of looking to tribunal. So again, I mean, we all know all of what is said isn't necessarily true, but that is not to mitigate that this is a broken system, as Marie says, and we need to find a way forward. I think we equally feel very positive in regard to the fact of the engagement we've got in relation to the wider system, and also with our parent and carer association being very supportive in regard to us trying to, as much as we can, co-produce some solutions with our parents and carers. The reality is, of course, part of the reason of people like me being so concerned is in regard to the fact that we are only part of a very complicated system. It is an educational health and care plan for a reason. It's both education, health and social care. We all know that system changes in health at present is going to equally, I think, offer us challenges going forward in this space too. But equally, the alignment there needs to be of sometimes for parents, sometimes for schools, considering what true inclusion looks like and how we do support some of our most vulnerable children who aren't served sometimes by being at a distance, but are served better within some of our mainstream schools. But that's tricky for some families perhaps to accept. So very difficult picture. And as I've said, it's big on our priority. And this is part of the approach we're making and part of the vehicle we're doing. MIM's role, helpfully, is one that we've agreed as a partnership to employ across to ensure that somebody like a MIM can help us recognise this is not either a council issue, a school issue, a health issue, but we need to kind of work more collaboratively across. But unfortunately, the system at the moment is not built for that.
Just say thank you. That was a very helpful answer. Obviously, you'll understand not many people write to their MP because they're happy.
Thank you, Chair. I noted at 2.12 on page, for other members, 29, that we got a lower settlement than we were anticipating. This is obviously of considerable concern as this is a growth area for the city. Are we confident that we can manage that on a 3-year settlement? That's the first bit of my question.
Okay, I mean, just to be clear, nobody did. So it wasn't a Milton Keynes situation. The government decided to pause any review of funding pending the SEND reforms. Whilst we've been given indications that we were likely to receive somewhere between 3 and 5% uplift on what is already a hugely challenging budget, and we'd actually modelled what that might look like so that we could set a budget, we kind of had the rug pulled under our feet just before Christmas, when actually what was said was, oh, actually, no, we're going to keep the levels at the levels last year. Now, that's challenging for us, and I'll come to how we've resolved it. But across the country, where there are already local authorities in significant deficit for their high needs block, you can imagine the way that news has been received. In Milton Keynes, we've managed our high needs block really carefully, very judiciously. We have ensured that we've only used it for the things that we should be using it for. I might suggest that in other councils that might not have been the case. For example, Simon was talking earlier about school travel support. We should not be using high needs block for school travel support. It's general fund. But my understanding is that there's been ways of being able to do that from some local authorities to help relieve the pressure on the general fund for school travel support. We haven't done that in Milton Keynes, and actually we're doing really well with our school travel support budget. We bring it in budget. In fact, this year, we've just had it reported this morning, we're going to bring it in under budget this year. But also we've ensured that all of the high needs block that we are spending, that we're using it for the right things, that where we've got pressure on other areas, we're not bailing it out via the high needs block, but also that we're getting the best bang for our buck in terms of how we're using that valuable resource, and where ensuring it's where it needs to make a difference. Before we received the announcement, we had a consultation on how we reorganised our SEND staffing service, and still thinking we were going to get somewhere between that 3 and 5% uplift, I said to Vic Cortis, the head of SEND, we need to reshape the service to deal with the latest challenges that we've got because they're constantly changing. So, for example, having somebody who's responsible for working in that tribunal space, rather than trying to do that on top of a day job. For example, having somebody responsible for EHCP quality across the whole of education, health and care. But also I said we need to look at whether we can bring a saving to the high needs block, because most of our SEND staff are paid for legitimately via the high needs block. And so just as this announcement landed, we closed that consultation and actually reshaped the staffing and delivered around £300,000 worth of saving to the high needs block. That, as it happens, has been extraordinarily helpful. That's not why we did it. We did it because I felt that we need to lead by example, and where we need to be delivering more for less, more efficiently, and we need to be deliver more coherently, which will make us more efficient. But as it happens, we would have been £300,000 worse off had we not have done that with our own central staffing just before Christmas. Once we looked at the situation that we were in following the announcement, it worked out that not including that 300,000, so we were going to be a £700,000 deficit this financial year. So it would have been £1 million. We quickly got together our what's called the High Needs Reference Group of the Schools Forum. They are made up of partners across SEND settings and schools and settings in Milton Keynes. We quickly got together and we quickly put together a set of options for those individuals to consider, their weigh up the benefits and the risks. And to be clear, it was about which was the least worst option to pursue in the light of the government announcement. And I'm very pleased to say that group of stakeholders seriously considered each of the options and came up with a way in which to balance the budget, which we think is the responsible thing to do. Now, there were some people in the room at the beginning of the meeting who felt that we may as well just go into deficit like the rest of the country. That's not what I find acceptable with taxpayers' money. And so we were very clear that wasn't up for negotiation, that actually we need to balance the budget, as we expected to balance the council's budget. But by the end of the meeting, they had come up with a set of proposals that looks like we can balance the budget. It won't give us any contingency, and bear in mind that we had about a £1.3 million contingency when we started this financial year, and that's been wiped out. So we've taken as much as responsibility as we can. We've been proactive in our thinking. We've tried to be responsible and judicious with the money that we've got, but it is extraordinarily challenging. We don't know the reason. We never really know who's going to move into Milton Keynes and what needs they're going to move into Milton Keynes from. We can try and project that based on historical data, but because of the cost of independent placements, for example, 1 or 2 children can skew our projections significantly and put additional pressure on the budget, which is why we have always kept a contingency in the budget, despite schools saying, well, can't we have that because we need it? We've said, hang on, this is a huge budget. It's kind of erratic and difficult to predict. We need that cushion. That's good accountancy. So I suppose the short answer to that question is I'm extraordinarily concerned. I am not relying on some big announcement to come forward through and bail us out, but instead we're taking responsibility for making difficult decisions in Milton Keynes right now to give us the very best chance. If in the next few weeks or months it works out that we are going to have more money into the 26-27 financial year, then that can only be a good thing in terms of allowing us that buffer and that contingency, but B, also enabling us to be front runners in terms of any of the reforms that come out of the white paper, and to ensure that we've got that wriggle room to be able to achieve that. So I don't know if that helps.
That helps, Marie. And I think the short answer would be no. Are you confident? No. Right. That would have been great. But I think that's helpful for committee to know. I sit on the Children and Young People's board at the LGA. So I've been sort of looking at the white paper, and we've been doing quite a lot of work around the SEND agenda. I mean, we are quite concerned about what it is the government say they're going to take over, because we still don't seem to have any information. And I can see that there's other faces around the room going, we don't know yet either. But I am aware that the third reading of the Children's Welfare and Education Bill was today in the Lords, so we're getting there. And I'm glad to hear what Tracy says about February, because I'd heard it would be closer to the end of March. So I think we're in mystery lands, I think. But I think it also shows how difficult this piece of work is to get squared off. And whilst I empathise with the rest of the country all being in the same place as we are, they're not the same when we are a growing community. You know, we have a new town deal being discussed. We've got, you know, expansion going over, whether that is not the same as the rest of the country. So I think this committee needs to be mindful of how we push that message back up and say we should be campaigning hard for the city and the needs it's got. And the one thing that I think would be really important, and I ask this for a recommendation, Chair, is that there is a briefing on the Children's Wellbeing and Education Act for the new committee coming in, because there's going to be a lot in there that we don't know already. Even though we've been and have looked at the readings, there's an awful lot of information in there, and I think the new committee needs to be really mindful of what agenda that sets, because it changes the way we run the children's service right across the board. And I think that is going to be just as hard for professionals as it is for committee members. And finally, Chair, I've realised a long time ago I should have been an educational psychologist. I could have retired by now.
I was thinking the same thing, Jane. Thank you. I might need help with the last recommendation, but does anyone else have any questions? Yes, Namrata.
Just one question. One of the strategies is EHCP to be timely, high quality, and holistic. Can we also add something about EHCP assessments, just because of I know getting an EHCP is the biggest hurdle, but the EHCP assessment, because of the volume and the time allocated, sometimes becomes a tick box exercise and it's not reviewed as frequently as it should. So can we put in something about assessments? If it's electronic, it's just like a PDF form still. So I don't know if the EHCP plan was in electronic form, which everybody could fill in their version, log in and fill in, it would make it so much simpler for everybody. But I don't know if it's within your remit or not. Thank you.
So just to sort of reassure, within that priority, we are talking about both the assessments and the plans. So assessments and plans to be timely and high quality, and quality in its broadest sense. So high quality in terms of, you know, could we tick a set of quality indicators, but also quality in the sense that, is it actually making an impact for children and young people? And we look at that through audits and things. In terms of whether the document could be more kind of live, more like a shared document, again, a really interesting point that's been a really significant part of the last 10 years of conversation. So there's been, as part of the change programme, there was a lot of testing around exactly that, an online version of the Education, Health and Care Plan that standardises it across the country, because at the moment there's no standardised template. Significant challenges came out of the sort of test work that happened. There was real difficulties in agreeing what the template should be, how the format might work, and my understanding is that has been dropped as part of the change programme, and so is unlikely to be part of those reforms. Locally, we have looked at the templates that we use. We have looked at how we manage our annual review processes so that we can get to a place where those documents are as high quality as possible over the period of time that those children and young people have them. and there's lots of work still going on around that. So we had something last year called a Courageous Conversation, which was chaired by the South East region. So an independent chair came in and did some work with us around annual reviews. That was the topic that we chose as our Courageous Conversation. Schools representation from our parent carer forum and local authority and other partnership members were all there. And lots of recommendations came out of that Courageous Conversation around annual reviews and how we could make sure that we've got that really good quality and sort of timely response. So that's all part of our strategic planning, and it's all within those projects which are monitored and kind of overseen by the strategy groups.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. So the Ofsted inspection raised the area of improvement around ensuring the voice of children and young people and families is central to the process. And Matt talked about the adversarial space within that area, and also about the parent and carers being involved in co-production. So it was just to have an update on co-production and how that's developing, whether it is something that can address the adversarial space or.
So we have a part of our strategy is specifically around that. So that's the children and young people will be at the heart of our plans. We've got lots of projects within there around how we co-produce with families. But I'd like to give a specific example, if that's okay. So last week we held a session for our new SEN team. And Marie mentioned that we've just restructured our SEN team. So we've got a lot of new staff, but we also have a lot of staff who've been here previously who are now in kind of new, slightly different roles. And as part of that induction for the entire team, we co-produced a session with PACA MK, so that's our Parent and Carers Alliance, our SEND Parent Carer Forum, around communication with families. So representatives from PACA came in and spoke to the team about what the experience of communicating with the team can be like, what it can feel like to talk to professionals as a parent of a young person with SEND, what the likely journey those parents have already been on is, and how some of the responses that we can give if perhaps we're very busy, you know, how that can land with families. We then did a piece of work where the team started drafting up what they felt would be a reasonable sort of customer service charter or professional promise, or kind of, you know, whatever wording you want to use around it. What could families expect from them in terms of the way that we would engage and the sort of communications that we would give, and also thinking about that from the perspective of young people, because of course we're talking about children and young people who, for a lot of them, they will be advocating for themselves at the appropriate point of their journey. So we have a first draft as a result of that co-produced session of how we would engage, how the service feel they could engage with families. And the next stage of that piece of work is that PACA MK are going to support us to do some consultation work with families around both what the team think is reasonable, but also how do we think parents should engage with the professionals as well, so that we have that almost that, you know, informal contract around this is what you can expect from us and this is what we expect from you, that we will have co-produced and then we will obviously publish on the local offer. So that's just one example, but we look to sort of co-produce things like that with our Parent Carer Forum on a regular basis, and they are very engaged across the strategy. We are also doing a piece of work at the moment around our SENCO quadrants. So within Milton Keynes, we have 4 quadrant areas for our schools, and our SENCOs within those schools are invited to attend quadrants that currently take place 3 times a year. They're a kind of networking meeting. And we are looking at how, so they're co-run with our schools. They co-chair them alongside the local authority. We're looking at how we could use those sessions in partnership with schools to start capturing the voices of more children and young people within schools. So we have obviously our youth council in terms of capturing voices of children and young people. Last year we also had a SEND youth council, which we're looking at how we can integrate better with the wider youth council moving forward. But the reality is we want to be able to capture more voices of children and young people. And actually, particularly when you're talking about SEND, you need the people that have got relationships with those children and young people to be able to capture those voices effectively. We can't just bring them into a room with some new professionals and say, tell us what you think. That's not going to work. So is there a way that we can look at using our quadrant meetings with our SENCOs to say, can you go away to your schools and settings, to your own youth councils that you already have set up, to your SEND groups within your schools, to capture thoughts, ideas, next steps that feed into our strategy that help us with baselining where we are from the perspective of children and young people with SEND, and also kind of contributing those additional ideas, which we've seen how powerful that is with the Youth Council here tonight, kind of bringing more of that into our strategy moving forward. It is difficult, co-production. It's difficult, it's time consuming, it's challenging. We do as much of it as we can. I wouldn't always say we get it, perfectly right all of the time, but it's certainly something that we work really hard on in terms of how do we ensure that we're capturing those voices of children, young people, and parents throughout our strategic plans.
Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Yes, Jenny.
Sorry, a couple of comments and one quick question. Firstly, absolute congratulations on catching up with, on thinking you are going to catch up with the assessment. That will make a major difference to a lot of people. Can I just check how long after that will it take to catch up with the ECHPs?
So we've already caught up on the backlog of educational psychology assessments. The bit that we now got to do is, because that's just one part of the assessment process, we now need to put that into the whole plan, and that's the bit that I said we will be caught up on by the summer, by the end of this academic year. Yes, the plans.
Stick. That will be a great relief to one or two parents. I've still got waiting for them. So, and then the other one you said, drat it. I haven't noted down. There was something else that you said that you were achieving that really struck me as being a milestone. What was the one that I mouthed to you? No. Drat it, because we really ought to have recorded that, because there was something else that you said that you had got to, and I can't remember. Oh, the balanced school transport budget, yes. Really, congratulations. I have been a councillor for 20 years come May, and that's the first time I've ever heard that. Well done.
Thank you, Jenny. If there's no one else, I'll move on to recommendations. So, first recommendations is that officers report back to the committee when the white paper has been published and provide updates to the committee using data from the SEND dashboard on the impact of the SEND strategy. And that for officers to provide a briefing on the Children and Wellbeing Act to members in the new council year / new committee coming in.
Chair, if I can just clarify that, I think it should be outside of committee because it's too big an item to do on a committee agenda. Okay. So it would be a specific briefing session. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, outside of committee meeting. Thank you. And that officers explore ways in which they can use their quadrant meeting to include the voices of children and young people and their parents were said. Anything else? Are we agreed on that? Thank you very much. So that moves us on to item 8, work programme, our final Oh, wow, good. Our final item this evening is to consider the work programme as we come to the end of this year's cycle of meeting. We're actively looking for suggested topics for next year. If you would like to propose any items for consideration for next year's meetings, please do so now, or you can forward to your representative on the planning group or, yeah. Thank you. Items 9 and 10, the agenda pack also includes 2 items for information only, a children's services finance and precious paper, and a MASH quarterly update. These items are not for discussion this evening and are presented to the committee for information only. If you do have any questions regarding the report, please contact the Democratic Services Officer, who will ensure that the relevant report author is asked for a response.
Chair, can I just put on record my thanks for the financial budget summary? This is of real great use to this committee. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for that. And I do very much agree with you on that. Well, that concludes all the businesses for this meeting. Thank you to everyone for their participation this evening. And I declare the meeting closed at 9:24 p.m. Thank you.